Welcome to this second session of today's evidence session looking at population change in Wales. Delighted to welcome for this panel Walter May, who is the founder and chief executive of GlobalWelsh, which is an organisation that promotes and represents the Welsh diaspora globally. And we're also joined by Robyn Lovelock from Ambition North Wales, working closely with the North Wales growth deal. So thank you very much, for both of you, for being here today to help us as we think about what is going on with the Welsh population and what are the big picture changes that are happening in Wales and what, if anything, governments can do to mitigate some of the impacts of these changes, particularly as we're seeing the decline in working age and particularly younger people in parts of Wales, the west and the north, and some of the trends that we're seeing like that. So to get us started with our questions, I'm going to ask Ben Lake to kick off. Ben.
Thank you, Chair, and diolch yn fawr for you both attending the session this morning. As you'll be aware, the 2021 census recorded quite a significant demographic change to the population in Wales. As the Chair mentioned, certain parts of Wales suffered quite a reduction in the overall population, Ceredigion being one of those areas, but also within that the demographic makeup has changed quite significantly in that we have aged. And I'm just interested, because the picture across Wales is something similar of a trend towards an older population, and I'm just interested to hear your thoughts as to whether that presents any particular challenges or problems from your point of view. So if I can start with Ms Lovelock, please.
Good morning. I absolutely agree with the general trends that you've just outlined, and we see that in North Wales, obviously with the coastal communities, particularly ageing, I would say. I've not seen the breakdown, but the feeling is that those are ageing more rapidly, and then rural depopulation as well. So we definitely can see that happening in our communities, and particularly I think the impacts on Welsh-speaking communities in the region where a lot of that change is happening.
And in terms of from your point of view, the problems that it causes, is it a matter of ensuring that there is that critical mass to attract interest and investment? Is that one of the issues that you're finding?
I think it's about services at the end of the day. What is there for young people? Are there housing opportunities, social opportunities, and obviously critically work opportunities? And so the North Wales Growth Deal, which I work for, has really set about trying to address some of those issues through for example, establishing strong digital infrastructure and getting that up to kind of modern standards, looking at the infrastructure around housing and providing additional housing opportunities in the region, and then looking at the career pathways through a wide range of the Growth Deal projects. So, the awareness has been there for some time, with the Growth Deal being developed over the last 10 years. So there's interventions that are in place, but do need to be built on. I can talk more about that.
Thank you very much. Mr May, if I can ask yourself, firstly, your sort of impressions of the consequences of this demographic change that we're witnessing in Wales, and then more specifically in terms of fostering entrepreneurship, supporting businesses in those parts of Wales, such as my own, that is depopulating and ageing at a rate of knots. What are the problems and challenges that it causes?
Yeah, I prefer to look at it as an opportunity, and talented people will leave their place of birth, whether it's Wales or any other location around the world. So every country has issues like this. Right. Small countries probably is more acute. So I think it's something to celebrate, that these young people are ambitious and they see their futures somewhere else. It'd be great if it was in Wales, and I think the challenge for us is to make sure that they understand what the opportunities are. I think they need to be more visible to keep them or to attract them back. So when they leave Wales, they have an experience which we then should be tapping into and utilising to help Wales become more prosperous, whether that's by them returning or not, because there's a finite set of circumstances where someone would consider returning. I mean, I returned to Wales, but you can define the scenarios by which people might consider returning. Being aware of opportunities in Wales is obviously a part of that, but now with hybrid working, they could return and still work somewhere else, as I did. I commuted Monday to Friday for 5 years. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But so I think it's an opportunity rather than a problem. Personally, that's my take on it.
Brief supplementary, because that's music to my ears, representing Ceredigion, of course, and the push on digital connectivity being such as it is. Again, in your experience, are you finding that with improved connectivity and the rise of hybrid working, that there is an opportunity there for areas such as Ceredigion to really make the case for our, the brightest and best across the world to look again at coming home, as it were?
Yeah, definitely. And I know a senior person at the Economist magazine who lives back in Wales, back in Ceredigion, I believe. Wow. And she was amazed when she asked her employer if she could do that, because she thought they'd say no, but they actually agreed for her to do it. So yeah, I think definitely, absolutely.
It's very interesting. We need, I think, to celebrate some of those examples a bit more. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ben. Virginia Crosby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for coming here today. My question relates to average earnings and productivity. We've got an average salary in Wales of 32k versus 35k in England and Scotland, and that whole sort of low skill, low pay trap where we've got a limited demand for high skilled workers. So therefore, we've got a lot of a low skilled workforce. Be interested in your thoughts on that, Robyn, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So the growth deal is set up to both look at high value jobs, so particularly in the technology and manufacturing sectors, and then pathways into those careers. So, for example, the Enterprise Engineering Optics Centre that's just started construction in Wrexham. There's a plan to have 700 trainees associated with that project to support those pathways into higher value employment. I think also within the Agri-food and tourism programme, we've particularly the tourism talent network. One of the projects there is really looking to work with private sector companies to support low skilled and employees into the sector, so that they see a career pathway from low skilled entry towards higher value careers. So we do see that as an issue, particularly in rural areas where geographic and transport issues are a challenge to get people into the kinds of employment that would offer higher salaries. So there are limitations there, and obviously that then promotes people leaving their immediate communities to move closer to the jobs, whether that's in Wales or outside. And I live on the border, so that can often be outside to higher salaries there. So the growth deal is working to get that into place, but it's a longer term process.
So thank you. So in your view, what more needs to be done?
I think the investment, the challenge on the skills side, and those skills pathway into the higher employment opportunities. The challenge that we experience is around inconsistent funding. So with that Tourism Talent Network project, for example, we've got shared prosperity funding at the moment, and we're able to do a lot of promotion to really transform the discussion around career opportunities in tourism. So last week there was an event that engaged about 465 students across Denbighshire in career pathways in tourism, which has led to about 60 expressions of interest in the Tourism Talent Network placements, which is an exciting start for the project. But that shared prosperity funding will obviously come to an end. So what's going to happen over the next 10, 12 years of growth deal, where that additional revenue funding, we don't have a vision of what that looks like at the moment. So it's difficult to plan those career pathways. By the time you create the understanding of what the career pathways look like, you engage the young people and understand what they're looking for, the funding has come to an end, but you still have the need to communicate it and get the word out. As a final point, I think the challenge is shifting some of the dialogue within our communities around how parents are talking about opportunities with their young people. There is a strong, I see in our community, there's a strong tendency to say you need to leave to kind of get ahead and to access those higher paid employment opportunities. And the type of changing those types of discussions and that sentiment takes long-term investment and opportunity.
Thank you, Robyn. Walter?
It's not something I necessarily have much insight into, but certainly the more ambitious businesses we can start in Wales and help to grow that are based on talent, because talent in the tech space, for example, you couldn't get away with paying low salaries because the competition for talent is intense. So, but those businesses need to obviously grow, internationalise, which often they find very difficult, and the diaspora can play a big role in that. And then the competition for talent means that they would have to pay higher salaries, probably comparable with other parts of the UK, including London in some cases. So I think it's about having a growth in the Welsh economy of the types of businesses that have the potential to grow and have to employ high-skilled, talented people. And I think Wales has a lot to offer young, talented people in terms of work-life balance, but the salary is always a factor. So they might want to come back to Wales, but maybe it's a barrier for them to return. So it's something, we need to think about. But it's going to come from growth in young, ambitious businesses, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Tonya, please.
Leads on quite nicely for me, actually. Walter, what can we learn then from the Welsh diaspora to respond to population change challenges, such as a reduction in the working age population?
I suspect that very few of them are aware there's a problem. So the first thing you do, at least when I engage with someone, is you have to update them. The Wales you left is not the Wales we have today. So I think there's definitely an education piece to that. And individual diaspora have interest in certain subject areas. And so it's tapping into what they're passionate about. And how they would like to give back. And generally, they do want to give back. They can give back in terms of their time. They can give back in terms of mentorship and sharing their knowledge. They have a network, and in many cases, they have money that they're looking to invest. So I doubt they're aware of the population challenge, and because it's not something that necessarily they would be exposed to. If you ask them, what would they be considered? Would they contribute back in some way to help address that? I'm not sure what they would say and what they could actually do.
I mean, is your network then a platform for doing that education piece?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So, fundamentally, we focus on four things. One is to help Welsh companies trade internationally. So we take the risk out of doing that and the cost by connecting them to diaspora in any part of the world that they want to consider trading in. We want to encourage international investment, both FDI and DDI, diaspora direct investment, and we do quite a lot of work in that area. Last year we'd have brought nearly £2 million of investment from the diaspora back to Wales into 5 or 6 businesses. Thought leadership is something we major on as well, because within our diaspora we've got experts in every single field you can imagine, and we want them to share that global knowledge with our aspirational businesses. And then mentorship is very important as well. So we got programs in each of those areas.
So is 2 million gone into 5 or 6 businesses, the leadership, the mentorship? Is there anything else the diaspora can do to support jobs growth in Wales?
Well, investment, obviously. If you help these businesses scale, then by definition they're going to have to employ more people. So, yeah, definitely. There's several things. All the things I mentioned potentially lead to growth in businesses, help them scale, invest in them, will lead to more jobs, more higher skilled, higher paid jobs.
Do you think there's a role for politicians in that, in supporting that work?
Yeah, I did it. GlobalWelsh was based on a piece of research I did in 2015, and best practice from around the world is a partnership with public sector. So we are a private sector organisation right now. We could do more. We could do a lot more if we could partner, effectively with the public sector. We have done some work for Welsh Government, but we've never really been on the same team. We've been kind of at a distance and at a separation, and that separation doesn't allow you to actually maximise the opportunity that presents itself. We have an amazing diaspora, at least the same size as the population of Wales. So we've got 3 million advocates for Wales out there. They can sell Wales, they can provide visibility of what's going on in the wider world, they can identify inward investment opportunities for us, they can do a whole range of things, but we really haven't, we're tip of the iceberg right now, what they can actually contribute back.
There's a lot more potential to tap into.
Yeah, and we've proved out these programs. We've got a platform, because you can only bring people together if you have a community platform. So we built that, and we want to make that a place where our diaspora connects to each other, but also connects back to Wales.
Thank you.
Can I add a piece just on the...
Yes.
Thank you. So I lead on the Agri-food and tourism programme within the growth deal, and I think as in terms of the question about what can politicians do, I would like to ask that there's a balance around the foundational economy and agri-food aspects of what Wales is good at. The tendency can be to focus on the high-tech, the STEM areas in promoting what Wales is good at, and we are extremely good at that, and we have a lot of investment in the region, but also there are massive shifts going on within agri-food, and the value of the work that people are doing across Wales, but in North Wales is obviously my area of interest, the value of those services around food production, around biodiversity and flooding prevention, those all have important and increasing value, and so for politicians to be able to speak as much about the value that those rural economies bring for our society as a whole in the UK, in those upland areas, in the rural areas, the rural valleys, is really critical. Increased visibility in the media, in interviews, in policy making and investment, I think will be critical given the shifts going on in the sector over the coming years.
Yeah, thank you.
We are just about to start a piece of research to ask our diaspora engage more effectively with them and try and establish why they left, what would encourage them to come back, and we could ask lots of other questions, maybe the one that you posed there. You know, what could they contribute to in some way to the population or the population challenge? We could ask them that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. If I can jump in on the questions here, and Walter, really interested by your own personal story, but also the network that you've established and grown. The Irish government last month, in fact, alongside the construction sector in Ireland, launched a campaign to try and attract Irish construction workers living overseas to come back to Ireland, because there's so many job vacancies in the construction sector. In fact, the Irish government in 2015 did a big campaign to try and get Irish people, the Irish members of the Irish diaspora, to move back to Ireland to help be part of the kind of economic renewal of Ireland. Do you think there's a case for us doing something similar in Wales? I mean, what I'm getting at here is a lot of what I guess you described as a natural pattern, isn't it? Yeah. Younger people leaving Wales to go and work elsewhere, and it's been happening for centuries, and at some point many of those people will find their way back to Wales, whether it's to retire or whether it's still while they're working, and that's a perfectly healthy picture. But do you think there is a case for whether it's a Welsh Government marketing campaign, whether it's something done in partnership with the private sector, to actually say to the Welsh diaspora that you've been successful, come back to Wales, we need your skills and experience?
Yeah, I mean, both Scotland and Ireland have had a thing called a homecoming, where I think I've spoken to a lot of diaspora, as you can imagine, and some of them felt that there was a certain resentment at the fact they left. And we shouldn't feel resentful that they've gone. We should, and I never see any acknowledgement by any of the public sector of how brilliant these people are. And we have a thing called Wonderful Welsh Stories. So if we find a diaspora that's done something exceptional, when we write the story, and there's a lot of them on our website if you want to take a look. So I think if I was running the Welsh Government, I would let these people know how proud we are of them, how we respect the fact they've left, how we want to celebrate their success wherever it is in the world. That's the first thing. And I think in doing that, you then have the right, I think, then to say, come back and help us. Come back and contribute to whatever initiative it might be. And we have on our platform, we have a thing called Call Out. So you can call out to the diaspora for whatever you want to call out to, and it's used by our members, and they call out for all sorts of things. It's really an ask, and it can be many different forms. So, yeah, we have a mechanism to do it, but I think it has to start with a certain amount of respect and acknowledgement that the diaspora are important to us, and they've never heard that from anybody.
Okay. Some of us from the committee were in the States at the beginning of last year, and we met with the New York Welsh group set up by Ty Francis, and an extremely impressive group of people from all over Wales doing different things in New York, and all of them very much engaged with what was going on back home in Wales and wanting to feel like they can be part of the future for Wales as well. So I think there's definitely something there to tap into. Robyn, from a North Wales perspective, do you have a view on the kind of theme I've just been talking about in terms of attracting people back to Wales, in terms of the work you're doing with the growth deal? Are you seeing any signs of people wanting to come home to be part of that?
I would say, we meet returned diaspora regularly in all of our work, and I think, as you said earlier, that is a natural ebb and flow. I think that the concern is that the ebb will become greater than the flow back. We specifically in the growth deal have 4 areas of equality and wellbeing that we target with all of our projects. Those are cross-cutting across the themes that we've been discussing. So all of our projects look at opportunities for young people, particularly, and we've chosen the ages 16 to 35 because that's the main ebb age group. All of our projects look at opportunities in rural areas, areas of multiple deprivation, and Welsh-speaking communities, so that as the growth deal progresses with implementation, we're able to track the impact that we're having on retaining young people and strengthening those pathways. So we are implementing that, I would say, and aware of it, but I think that maybe more could be done through the education system to really emphasise what we have in Wales, the opportunities that we have, and to help particularly young people realise what's on their doorstep. I mean, even just a couple of weeks ago, talking to someone in my local gym who grew up in Llangollen, he left feeling that there was no opportunities and went to work in Thailand for a while and came back to Llangollen, and he told me he'd never actually realised growing up in Llangollen that there was a river. And he says that he knows that sounded remarkable, but it was so commonplace to him, so taken for granted, that it was never a factor in his life. And when he's come back, he's been able to now get employment locally. He's training as a raft guide, and the river will become his economic opportunity. But it really struck me that it's very hard for young people to realise what's on their doorstep until they go. So obviously that's great if they want to go, but how do we make sure that in that we are finding a way to welcome them and support them as they return?
Steve, I'll just add that we've got 2 projects right now with GlobalWelsh. One is in Blaen y Gwent, which is, I believe, the poorest part of Wales, I believe, economically. And we are connecting aspirational Blaen y Gwent businesses to the Blaen y Gwent diaspora. Because the thing about diaspora, if you say, he's part of the Welsh diaspora, and they feel a relationship to Wales, but much more powerful than that is the place in Wales that they feel connected to. So if you left Abervale 20 years ago and you've had a stellar career somewhere else in the world, and someone taps you on the shoulder and says, there's some opportunities here to give back to Abervale, they'd be very keen to know what that is. because that's where they feel an emotional attachment to. So it's all about place as well as country, and the place is more important. I mean, I'm from Pontypool. If I ever see Pontypool written down anywhere, I'm attracted to find out what's going on. And then we're doing a project with the Welsh-speaking counties of Ceredigion and Gwynedd, where they, again, identifying aspirational businesses and connecting them with their diaspora, Welsh-speaking diaspora by and large, because the place is important. So I just want to emphasise that, really.
That's important because Ceredigion and Gwynedd are the two counties seeing the biggest population decline in Wales.
So we're doing a 12-month project with them as a pilot.
That's helpful.
Just to add on that, for a growth deal perspective as well, there's a number of projects going on with MSpark and the RVOR programme. So working to this really exciting way of really hosting diaspora back for weekends, coming from elsewhere in the UK or further afield, to come back with their families and spend weekends back in North Wales to get to know particular areas and understand what coming back would look like, and see if that's an option for those families. So some really tangible examples of engaging the diaspora there.
Very good, thank you. Beth Winter, please.
Thank you, and thank you for giving the time. It's really fascinating, particularly about the diaspora. On national level, we've still, unfortunately, though, got high levels of economic inactivity in Wales, unemployment, and what work there is, a lot of it is low skill, low paid, short term. We've got some fantastic local projects which you've talked about, and just before you came in, we heard from 4 fantastic young people who are real role models, I think, for future generations. So I don't want to be too negative, but the question is really, how can and should economic investment be targeted in a different way in order to address the impacts of population change, given where we are as a nation at the moment? Robyn, do you want to go first? Because obviously you're part of the growth deal work.
Can you just rephrase the question? Or can you repeat the question?
How can or should we tailor economic investment differently or better in order to address the issue of population change?
Thank you. So this is at the heart of the way that the North Wales Growth Deal is looking at our economic investments in the region. We obviously, the focus of the Growth Deal is on jobs and investment, which are obviously important, and looking at that as prosperity for young people. However, with the Growth Deal, we are also looking at the wider well-being questions, kind of summarised by the Future Generations goals. So what is the impact of the opportunities that we're providing to support equality and community cohesiveness? How are we really supporting a kind of less impact on emissions and biodiversity, so that each project that we're looking at, we're not just looking at it from one perspective for young people's future, but looking at it from a multifaceted perspective, so that when we're making the decisions about those projects, we're able to balance what really will really support those future generations with the project.
Can I just ask, is there enough economic investment, is the first question, and is it going to the right places where the investment is going?
Is there ever enough economic investment? So, of course, we would welcome more, and I think the balance of that revenue and capital split, I think, is critical for us. There's no revenue funding for the delivery of the North Wales Growth Deal. So, getting some of those career pathways that I talked about in place, and that's long-term work, and it needs consistent investment in the regional skills partnerships, the skills partners to get things like the Young Person's Guarantee really operating well and with confidence over multiple years, rather than on an annual basis where we don't know. We don't have a clear plan for the next year or the year after, because we're not yet certain of what the investments will be. So we can have aspirations, but we can't have detailed plans. So I think for young people, it's getting those pathways clear, and then the communication of them, so that they have that confidence that if they do choose a particular training course that will take them 1, 2 or 3 years, that at the end of it we haven't just given up on them and moved away from that pathway. So it's building that confidence among young people, and it's needed within the wider sector to support that.
Thank you, Walter.
Yeah, I mean, we're not a growth deal, so we don't have money to invest. But I've been involved, obviously, very heavily in the Accelerated Growth Programme, which was a Welsh Government-funded programme. And I think they sought the best opportunities to invest in terms of individuals and companies, wherever they were in Wales. So I think they certainly was pan-Wales. Part of the work we're doing with Blind and Gwent is around aspiration amongst young people, providing them with role models, not just, people that have left Wales that have, like them, from the same schools that they've gone to, even with the same qualifications or whatever, they've gone and achieve amazing things in their careers. So, inspiring young people to think that they can achieve much more than they maybe believe they can. And we did a piece of research around diaspora direct investment, and it was an amazing result, actually, because what we discovered was there's a lot of Welsh people living somewhere else in the world that are investing in companies, but they invest where they live. And so the challenge for us is to get them to invest where they were born. And I think, every single town in Wales and city in Wales has got an amazing diaspora. They just don't know who those people are and they're not engaged with them. So I think getting investment from outside Wales, as well as obviously the public sector investment that takes place, which we don't have any control over as to how they do it and where they do it, is an additional amount of money, but it's more than that. It's those people inspiring people from their former schools or from their former towns to, aspire to what they've achieved. And I mean, I'm from Pontypool. I'm one of 6. I live in a council house, failed my 11 plus, but I've done all right. But you need someone to inspire you, and I was lucky enough to have a mentor that did that for me. And I think it's really valuable to get these mentoring people involved with young people to inspire them.
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Rob Roberts, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk an awful lot about the North Wales growth deal, if that's okay. December 2020, 120 million from Welsh Government, 120 million from the UK Government, 240 million in total. How much have we got left? What's been delivered so far?
We've last week, as I mentioned, we've got the first spade in the ground with the Enterprise Engineering Optics Centre, which is set to deliver at least 70 jobs for North Wales, as well as a strong skills pathway, as I mentioned, a target of 700 young people being trained through that Enterprise Engineering Centre. So there is spade in the ground. The Digital Signal Processing Centre within our digital connectivity programme is up and running in its second, going to third year with Bangor University. So 2 projects already out the door, as it were. And I've lost track because there's so many trying to get through the stage at the moment. But we've got outline business cases and full business cases, I think about 8 of them out of 22 about to pass those thresholds and go into delivery. We recognise that there has been a number of years where delivery has been slower than we would like. However, each of the projects, I would say, are in the growth deal because they are challenging projects to deliver, and we are determined that they are going to be transformational for North Wales. A lot of them, you could build a building like the Enterprise Engineering Centre, but you really want to make sure it's not just a building that you're investing in. You want to make sure it's really going to deliver those skills pathways and the transformational opportunities that will come from it. In the tourism sector, the Tourism Talent Network, again, we can support investments of the hub with the tourism training hub and the private sector businesses that are going to host the spokes. But how is that project going to really transform tourism within North Wales? And so these conversations, that the only opportunity the growth deal has to leverage those conversations is before we sign the funding agreement. Once we've signed the funding agreement and the buildings get built, we can't go back and say, well, we thought this was going to be transformational in an X, Y, and Z way. But it has, those conversations have to happen before that funding agreement. So we have been absolutely focused. We're all North Walian. We have been absolutely focused on exploring the transformational value of each project. Some have therefore fallen off because they weren't going to be transformational in the way that we needed them to be. and others are, as I say, imminent. So I'm really confident with where we're at. We're working very hard to get everything into delivery that we've scheduled.
Does the 240 million only kick in when your spade goes into the ground? So up to this point, with you've now got 2 projects, spades are in the ground. So has any of that money been spent in developing the business cases, or is it just the construction funding and things that the 240 covers?
I'm not the lead on the finance, but my understanding is that the main bulk of the spend is on the construction. So there is some related design, for example, like for the design of the buildings, that can be capitalised. So there will be, as soon as as soon as the funding agreement is signed, then those capitalised expenses can be claimed. There is a small proportion across the growth deal of, this is the bit I'm less clear on, but a small proportion that is reserved for delivery, for running the growth deal, because there's no revenue funding associated. So there is a top slice that is about making sure we've got the resources in place to deliver the growth deal. But the vast bulk of the growth deal is only spent once the funding agreement is signed.
What I'm trying to get to is what we can learn from the growth deal in North Wales that we can repeat elsewhere. And what it seems to be, the £240 million in December of 2020, because of inflation, is now only worth £203 million in buying terms. Has North Wales lost £37 million because it's taken too long to get these projects through? Are we taking too much time? Should the process be more streamlined? Are there too many stages in assessing these business cases? Because it feels like we've lost £37 million because of inactivity.
As I say, each project has its own challenges and a pathway that we're clear on. I think that when the growth deal was conceptualised, I think it was signed on the basis of projects that were very conceptual. And so a number of them, when you look into the detail, and I don't want to give specifics of projects that have moved on from the growth deal, but they might have committed to a certain number of jobs. But when we then looked into the detail of that, how they were going to be delivered, we couldn't get the confidence that we needed. So therefore, we chose to go separate ways. So I think there's lessons to be learnt at the signing of the growth deal as to how developed projects should be at that point. When because of the projects leaving the growth deal, we were then in a strong position to then put out a call for new projects. So at the beginning of last year, 2023, and we had £30 million to put out a call for £30 million of new projects, and fast delivery was a key part of that. So we're expecting that the delays of some of those projects that left will be made up for by speedy delivery of the new projects that are coming in, and that we will overall deliver on our contracted benefits around over 3,800 jobs and over £1 billion of investment. So we are confident we're on track to deliver the overall benefits over the course of the growth deal. But obviously there are, to deliver these transformational projects is taking that bit longer, and we'd be happy to go into the detail of that process.
Super quickly, as time's getting
quick, please.
When you say speedy, what does speedy mean? And secondly, in order to make up that difference of the inflation loss, have you made any representations to both the UK and Welsh Government to say that funding perhaps should be inflation linked so that we don't lose any money? Because obviously, as I say, we're down £37 million.
Yes, we would love it to be inflation linked so that there's further opportunities. But in terms of delivery, some of the business cases are expected to be signed in the summer. So really focused delivery. As I say, we've got a large number about to go through key gateways.
Thank you. Ruth Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both for coming today. Our first panel, we heard from 4 very eloquent young people telling us about the difficulties that young people are experiencing at the moment. And I suppose, Ms Lovelock, in terms of the growth deal, did you engage with young people, or how do you engage with young people, if you like, to make sure that it's fit for what they want to be doing? Because their aspirations are key. If you don't hook them in, you're not going to get them. So how did you deal with them, with getting them in?
So the Growth Deal projects have been developed over about the kind of last 8 to 10 years. So a lot of that engagement was around that period. Many of the Growth Deal projects are being delivered by project sponsors outside of the delivery team. And so those are, for example, in my programmes, Bangor University, Wrexham University and the Further Education Colleges, Group Llanrwthlo Menai and Coleg Cambria. And so they are engaging with young people on a daily basis and looking at career pathways and making those analyses. So the Growth Deal as a whole was informed by the experience of those institutions and their work with young people. When you look at the portfolio business case, you can clearly see those 4 areas of inequality and the considerations for young people within that around rural lack of opportunity in our Welsh-speaking communities, for example, and some of the key barriers that young people identify around housing and digital access. So those are areas that we engaged with in the design of the Growth Deal and continue to engage in, for example, with a shared prosperity fund, some funding at the moment on the digital connectivity programme about how communities and young people want their digital services to be accessible. So that continues. I would also say as an ongoing piece of work, the work with the Regional Skills Partnership, which sits within our team around the Young Person's Guarantee and the big conversations that have happened there across Wales and across North Wales in particular. So there is ongoing communication there. I come from a youth background, so there's more that I would like to see, but also we're limited by the revenue resources to be able to do that as well. So.
And I get that. I just think if a young person doesn't go to those institutions you've mentioned, how do they get to know about these things? Because communication about these issues, we've heard from them that sometimes it's difficult, sometimes mum happens to happen upon a course or whatever, and we don't want to leave it to luck. We want to know that young people can be encouraged through these systems, and I'm just not clear that...
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And as I say, I would like to see more funding go into that space. I think we can do more, but we are, that's a revenue funded set of work and we have capital funding. So we would like more revenue funding to go into that. I think that would be valuable.
Well made. Mr. May, I mean, obviously you've talked about your experiences, your life journey, if you like, and how a mentor was so helpful to you, and there were some nods from behind you there. How do you think your organisation can help young people, the diaspora?
Well, we've got some great examples of that written up and on the website, but older people are predisposed to want to help young people that are ambitious. So for us, I'd love to see universities and colleges teaching young people how to network within a professional context, because there's so many people within our community that would happily support and mentor young people, but they need to be visible to these older people so that they can actually connect with them and mentor them. So, what we see is a lot of young people just seem like a rabbit in the headlights when they put them into an online business professional network. They really don't know how to represent themselves and how to behave, and it's a pity because there's tons of opportunity for them to get mentored and tons of opportunity to get work experience. I'd love universities to be doing that, and they should be doing it, because the best way to get an opportunity in life is through networks, not through applying for jobs that are advertised. But it's a skill in itself of how you actually present yourself and be visible in a way that people would find you relatable. So the university and the schools got a lot to do there, and I don't see them doing anything, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you. I'll hand you back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Beth, did you have a final question?
Yeah, I suppose it's $1 million question. How do we future-proof our economy? Because we heard from the young people this morning and the issues they were raising around housing, mental health, support services, as well as employment. And there's an expectation, isn't there, for young people to go through the traditional school, university route. There's vocational education is being cut at the moment. So how do we future-proof the economy to ensure that we stem the population change that is happening
retain the talent, the untapped talent that we've got here, and also address the other end, which is the ageing population. It's a big question, and we haven't got time probably, but if there was one thing that each of you thought, right, this is essential to future-proof our economy. Robyn, do you want to?
Where to start on that? I think we've got to go into the heart of our communities where these conversations are happening. How are we influencing that dynamic of when young people are going through school and having those conversations with parents and with mentors that they meet along the way? How are we supporting those conversations to be positive and talk about the opportunities? And influencing at that level. So part of that, I think, is through the Career Wales and the colleges and schools networks. I'm not an expert in that area, but there seems to be something fundamental that needs to change. And then at the universities, and I've seen this from my work internationally with young people, but really looking at stronger linkages, not just at the university through the subject matter, but to entrepreneurialism as well. And so then you get into the likes of the networking and the value that brings, because you're creating an entrepreneurial mindset. So really making that fundamental within young people's schooling and university, so that they're looking outside of what may be the comfort zone that they see around them and the job opportunities they immediately see, and looking more proactively at what the future opportunities.
Because obviously employment is one aspect, but the young people talked about a lot of other issues. Sorry, very quickly, Walter.
So, most of the conversation here has been around, how do we attract people back? Well, if we could stop them leaving, that would fix a lot of our problems, which we can't. So, but the thing about attracting people back, it's difficult to be able to set an expectation that you can, or an outcome that you can aim for, because it just is inherently difficult to do. However, what we do know is those that come back have a disproportionate impact on the country, and there's plenty of examples of people that returned and done things that maybe they wouldn't have done if they'd stayed. So having a returners program, which we should design something, because it does require a particular design and a process about how we do it and how we deliver those outcomes. But the bigger opportunity, by far the bigger opportunity, and one which you can actually, well, we're already doing it actually, but one you can actually measure and forecast the outcomes from, is to connect with the diaspora, the ones that won't return. They will say to me, I have no intention of returning in terms of moving and physically living in Wales, but I want a return in terms of the impact that I'd like to have on Wales. And we've got some amazing diaspora that have come to the end of their corporate lives that want to give back to Wales, but there's no mechanism for them to do it. These are people like Warren East, who was Rolls-Royce chief exec for 5 years. We should have some way of engaging people like that into the public sector, where they can actually provide some world view on an expert evidence on, maybe advised policy possibly. So we've got a number of people like that, and I've asked the Welsh Government, look, these people have told me they're available to come and help Wales, and they'd like to get involved in a conversation with government. And the answer is, well, there's no way we can do that, which seems to me a massive missed opportunity.
And I have one last quick point.
Of course.
Thank you. I do think it's important. I think the other piece is really looking at what the future of work looks like for young people, in really eyes wide open. A lot of the future skills work relies on data from employers who are not, are informed by various risk assessments, and that as we look to the future, there are the significant changes, for example, within Agri-food and manufacturing around circular economy, foundation economy. We really need to be very clear on what those changes are likely to be, and we need to be really upfront and looking at with a just transition lens on what those employment pathways are how different they're going to look, so that we don't have with the kind of Tata Steel and Phosphofan kind of legacy where that's not anticipated and planned. We have very clear, this is where we need to be going, and this is going to look very different from maybe the parents' experiences who are maybe more influential on young people's pathways.
Being in a key to that, because
Yeah.
there's a huge gap.
And you look at the World Economic Forum risk assessments for the next 10 years, that looks very different. Yeah. So really taking that into consideration in what we're communicating to our young people loudly.
Thank you very much, and sorry to cut it off. I mean, there's lots more I'm sure we could ask, but I'm conscious colleagues want to get downstairs for the budget statement and get their seats. Can I just finish by asking one question to you, Walter May, and it's about how Wales, the story we tell about ourselves in Wales and the Welsh nation. I mean, I think today is the formal end of Wales in London week, so we've had 130 events this year being organised by Dan Langford and the team. I thought they've done a great job in, again, promoting Wales. But do you think that we're telling a strong enough and clear enough story in terms of whether it's trying to get people back from overseas back to Wales or encouraging young people to stay and be part of Wales's future? Do you think there's a clear and strong enough message about
We definitely are not.
who we are?
We did a pilot project where that came through loud and clear. And I can share the details with you at some point.
Please do.
But yeah, I can give you some anecdotal examples of that. The bigger challenge we have around. So we did some work on inward investment. So we identified a range of inward investment opportunities, but the interface between these businesses that are considering setting up an operation in the UK and Wales as a potential option was so broken. The interface is really difficult. So when we come, and we do come across them now, the question for us is: do we introduce them to Welsh government? Do we introduce them to central government? Do we introduce them to a growth deal? Do we introduce them to one of the councils? And that interface needs to be really well understood and advanced in terms of how it works, and it's not. So we lose a lot of opportunities because of that interface.
We might well speak to you again about those kind of themes in future. But thank you both for being with us, and apologies we've slightly run on over time, but it's been a really fascinating session, both part two and the first part that we held in private with the young people, who were just magnificent in terms of opening up and sharing with us their own experiences as young people trying to forge a future in Wales. So thank you to my colleagues. It's been a very good session. Bring it to an end. Order.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding has ended.